The retirement home called me and said your room is ready. Your son paid the first year in advance. I replied, I never applied to a retirement home. I live independently. The director said, he's here right now moving your belongings in. He said you were having an episode and needed immediate placement. I drove there shaking. When I arrived, my son was unloading my furniture from a truck, my house keys in his hand. Before we continue, this fictionalized case study is based on documented guardianship abuse cases. According to the National Center on Elder Abuse, approximately 1.3 million older Americans are under guardianship, with family members responsible for most exploitation cases. This examines warning signs of involuntary institutionalization schemes, and how elderly people can protect their right to independent living. Now let me tell you my story. My phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in my garden, pruning the rosebushes my late husband had planted 20 years ago. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Mrs. Porter, this is Gerald Patterson calling from Meadowbrook Senior Living. I wanted to let you know your room is ready. Your son paid the first year in advance, so you're all set to move in today. I stood there in my garden, pruning shears in hand, completely confused. I'm sorry. What? I think you have the wrong person. I never applied to a retirement home. Oh no ma'am, I have the right person. Evelyn Porter, correct? Your son Terrell arranged everything. He said you've been having difficulty living alone and needed care. My heart started beating faster. Mr. Patterson, I live independently. I don't need a retirement home. I think there's been some kind of mistake. Well, your son seemed quite certain. In fact, he's here right now moving your belongings into your room. He brought a truck full of furniture about an hour ago. The pruning shears fell from my hand. What do you mean, my belongings? My furniture? Yes, ma'am. A beautiful couch, dining table, bedroom set. He's been working with our staff to get everything arranged nicely for you. I couldn't breathe. Mr. Patterson, where is this place? What's the address? He gave me an address in Charlotte, about 20 minutes from my house.
Mrs. Porter, are you all right?
Your son mentioned you might be a bit disoriented when we called. He said you had an episode this morning, and that's why immediate placement was necessary for your safety. I did not have an episode. I am not disoriented. I'm 70 years old, not 90, and I'm perfectly capable of living in my own home. Ma'am, I'm just relaying what your son told us. I'm driving there right now. I hung up and ran inside, grabbing my purse and car keys with shaking hands. What was Terrell doing? Why would he tell people I needed a nursing home? Why was he moving my furniture? I just talked to him 3 days ago. He'd seemed normal. Asked how I was doing. Said he'd stop by later this week. He hadn't mentioned anything about a retirement home. About me having episodes. About thinking I needed care. I got in my car and drove toward the address, my mind racing through every conversation we'd had recently, searching for clues I'd missed. Meadowbrook Senior Living was a large modern facility with manicured lawns and a fountain out front. It looked expensive. Very expensive. I pulled into the parking lot and immediately saw a U-Haul truck parked near the entrance. My stomach dropped. There were men unloading furniture. My blue couch that I'd bought with my husband 30 years ago. My dining room table where I'd hosted every Thanksgiving and Christmas for decades. My bedroom set. My chairs. My lamps. Everything was being carried into the building, and directing the movers, telling them where to take things, was my son Terrell, 45 years old, dressed in an expensive suit, looking completely in control of the situation. I jumped out of my car and ran toward him. Terrell, what are you doing? He turned, and for a split second I saw surprise flash across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by an expression of concern. Mom? How did you get here? How did I? That's my furniture. From my house. What are you doing? Mom? Please calm down. This is for your own good. You can't live alone anymore. Yes, I can. I live perfectly fine. Who told you I needed a home? His wife Kimberly stepped out from behind the truck. She was dressed expensively as always. Designer sunglasses perched on her head, carrying a clipboard like she was managing a corporate event. Evelyn, honey, you've been declining. We've been worried about you for months. Declining? I'm perfectly healthy. I just saw Dr. Williams last month. She said I'm in excellent shape. Terrell moved closer, his voice taking on that patient tone people use with confused children. Mom, you've been having memory problems. You called me 3 times last week asking the same question. You forgot we had dinner plans 2 weeks ago. You left the stove on twice last month. I stared at him, my mind reeling. That's not true. I never left the stove on. And I called you once last week to ask what time dinner was, not 3 times with the same question. You're in denial, Mom. That's a symptom of early-stage dementia. We talked to a doctor, a specialist, and he confirmed it. He said placement in a care facility would be the safest option. What doctor? Dr. Williams never said anything about dementia. Not Dr. Williams. A specialist. Dr. Richard Stokes. He evaluated you and said you have early-stage cognitive decline, that immediate placement would be best. I never met any Dr. Stokes. No one evaluated me. Terrell exchanged a look with Kimberly, the kind of look that said, see how confused she is. Mr. Patterson, the facility director, came out of the building. He was a white man in his late 50s, wearing a polo shirt with the Meadowbrook logo embroidered on it. Mrs. Porter, perhaps we should all go inside and discuss this calmly. I'm not going inside. I'm going home, to my home, where my furniture belongs. Mom, you can't. Terrell's voice was firm now, almost cold. I've filed for emergency guardianship. The hearing is Friday. Until then, you need to be somewhere safe where you can be properly supervised. The words hit me like a physical blow. Guardianship? You're trying to get guardianship over me? Emergency guardianship. For your protection. The doctor's report says you're not capable of living independently anymore. That you're a danger to yourself. I am capable. This is insane. I garden, I cook, I drive, I manage my own finances. Mom, please. Terrell actually sighed like I was being difficult. We're doing this because we love you. Because we're worried. This facility is beautiful. They have activities, nursing staff available 24/7. They'll make sure you take your medications. I don't need anyone to make sure I take my medications. I've been taking care of myself for 70 years. But Terrell had already turned back to the movers, giving them more instructions about where to put my bedroom furniture. Like I wasn't even there. Like my objections didn't matter. Like he'd already decided my entire future without my consent. I stood there watching strangers carry my life into a building I'd never agreed to enter, and I felt something I'd never felt before toward my own son. Fear. I got back in my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel, and drove home. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw that my front door was standing open. I ran inside. Half my living room was empty. The couch gone. The coffee table gone. My favorite reading chair that my husband had given me for our 20th anniversary gone. In the bedroom, my bed was stripped. The frame, the mattress, my dresser, all gone. My house looked like it had been ransacked by thieves. I stood in the middle of my bedroom, the room I'd shared with my husband for 40 years before cancer took him, and felt like I was living in a nightmare. On the kitchen counter I found a stack of documents. My hands were still shaking as I picked them up and read through them. Emergency guardianship petition filed by Terrell Marcus Porter, regarding Evelyn Louise Porter. The petition claimed I was unable to care for myself, experiencing significant cognitive decline, and at risk of harm if left unsupervised. There was a medical affidavit from Dr. Richard Stokes stating that he had evaluated me and found I had moderate dementia and was unable to make informed decisions regarding my own care and safety. I'd never heard of Dr. Richard Stokes in my life. I'd certainly never been evaluated by him. There was more. A real estate listing agreement. For my house. The house I'd lived in for 40 years. The house my husband and I had paid off 10 years before he died. Listed for $425,000. The signature on the listing agreement looked vaguely like mine. But I'd never signed it. I would never agree to sell my house. And there was a power of attorney document, also with a signature that someone had tried to make look like mine. I never signed a power of attorney. I never gave Terrell legal authority over anything in my life. Sitting on top of all the documents were my house keys. The spare set I kept in a drawer in my bedroom. Terrell must have taken them at some point. Probably during one of his recent visits. Made copies. Used them to get into my house today while I was in the garden. My phone rang. It was my neighbor Patricia. Evelyn, honey, I saw moving trucks at your house earlier. Terrell said you were moving to a nice facility because you needed more care. Is everything okay? Did he have my permission to take my furniture? Well, he had keys to your house, so I assumed you knew about it. Evelyn, what's going on? Are you all right? I hung up without answering. My mind was racing. Terrell had planned this. Filed legal documents claiming I was incompetent, hired a doctor to provide false evidence, forged my signature, stolen my furniture, listed my house for sale, all without my knowledge or consent. I needed help. Professional help. I grabbed my laptop and searched for elder law attorney Charlotte N.C. The first result was Sandra Fletcher, elder law attorney. Her website said she specialized in guardianship abuse and protecting elderly people's rights. I called her office immediately. Fletcher Law, how may I help you? My name is Evelyn Porter, and my son is trying to have me declared incompetent and locked in a nursing home against my will. I need help. Today, right now. There was a pause. Ma'am, can you come to our office this afternoon? Say 3 o'clock? I looked at the clock. It was 1:30. I'll be there. Sandra Fletcher's office was downtown in a professional building. When I walked in carrying my folder of documents, her receptionist took one look at my face and immediately showed me to Sandra's office. Sandra was a black woman about 52 years old, with natural hair cut close to her head and eyes that looked like they'd seen every horrible thing families could do to each other. Tell me everything, she said, gesturing for me to sit down. I did. The phone call from Meadowbrook, finding Terrell moving my furniture, the guardianship petition, the forged documents, all of it. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad in neat, precise handwriting. When I finished, she started going through the documents I'd brought. Her expression got darker with each page she read. Mrs. Porter, this is elder abuse. Your son is attempting to institutionalize you against your will and steal your assets. Can he do that? Can he just put me in a home without my permission? Not without a court order granting him guardianship. And he doesn't have that yet. This petition was just filed yesterday, which means he's been planning this for some time, but he's already moved my furniture out, listed my house for sale, all of which is illegal. He's acting like he already has authority. He hasn't been granted by any court. That demonstrates premeditation and intent to commit fraud. She held up the power of attorney document. Is this your signature? I looked closely. It looks similar, but no, I never signed that document. I've never given Terrell power of attorney over anything. Then it's forged. That's a felony. She examined the medical affidavit more closely. Do you know Dr. Richard Stokes? Never heard of him before today. He claims he evaluated you on, she checked the date, last Tuesday at his office and found you have moderate dementia and are unable to care for yourself. Did anyone evaluate you last Tuesday? No. I was at home all day Tuesday. I worked in my garden in the morning, had lunch with a friend from church, then came home and read a book. No one evaluated me for anything. Sandra picked up her phone. We need to act very fast. The guardianship hearing is scheduled for this Friday. That's 3 days from now. If the judge grants emergency guardianship based on this fraudulent medical evidence and these forged documents, Terrell will have complete legal control over you. Where you live, what medical care you receive, what happens to your money and property, everything. What do we do? First, you're getting a comprehensive cognitive evaluation today. Right now, we're going to prove you're completely competent to make your own decisions. Second, we're filing emergency motions with the court to block this guardianship petition and expose the fraud. Third, we're calling the police. What your son has done, the theft of your furniture, the forgery, the attempted fraud, these are crimes. She started making phone calls. Within an hour, I was sitting in the office of Dr. Miriam Chen, a neuropsychologist Sandra had worked with on previous elder abuse cases. Dr. Chen was an Asian woman, maybe late 40s, with a calm professional demeanor that helped me feel slightly less panicked. Mrs. Porter, I'm going to conduct a comprehensive evaluation of your cognitive function. This will take several hours. We'll test memory, reasoning, judgment, problem-solving and daily living skills. Are you ready? Yes. I need to prove I'm not incompetent. Let's not think of it as proving anything. Let's just see how you're functioning. The testing was exhaustive. She had me remember lists of words, solve puzzles, answer questions about current events, do basic math problems, explain the meanings of proverbs, follow complex instructions. She tested my memory by having me recall stories she told me, remember sequences of numbers and identify objects she'd shown me earlier. She asked about my daily routine, how I managed my finances, whether I could cook, clean, drive, take medications properly. After 3.5 hours, she reviewed her notes and looked at me seriously. Mrs. Porter, your cognitive function is completely normal for your age. In fact, you're performing above average in several categories. I felt tears of relief burning behind my eyes. So I don't have dementia. You show absolutely no signs of dementia, memory impairment, or cognitive decline. Your reasoning ability is excellent. Your memory is sharp. You scored higher than average on all memory tests. You're fully capable of independent decision-making and self-care. Can you put that in a report? My son is trying to have me declared incompetent so he can steal my house. Dr. Chen's expression hardened. I'll have a comprehensive report ready first thing tomorrow morning, with my professional opinion that you are fully competent and capable of independent living. And Mrs. Porter, I'm very sorry this is happening to you. What your son is doing is unconscionable. While I was being evaluated, Sandra was busy building our defense. She contacted my regular doctor, Dr. Williams, and explained what was happening. Dr. Williams was shocked and angry. Guardianship? Evelyn is one of my healthiest 70-year-old patients. I just saw her last month for her annual checkup. Her blood work was perfect. Her cognitive function was excellent. We talked about her garden and her volunteer work at the church. She's sharp as a tack. Can you provide a written statement to that effect? Absolutely, I'll have it ready today, and I want to know who this Dr. Stokes is claiming to have evaluated my patient. I never referred Evelyn to any specialist. She doesn't need one. Sandra also did research on Dr. Richard Stokes. What she found was damning. Dr. Stokes was a consultant who provided medical evaluations for guardianship cases, but he had a terrible reputation among elder law attorneys. He was known as a rubber stamp. Someone who would diagnose dementia without proper evaluation if you paid him enough. He'd had complaints filed against him in 3 states. His medical license had been suspended in Virginia in 2019 for providing fraudulent evaluations in guardianship cases where he'd never actually met the alleged incompetent person. He'd moved to North Carolina and was somehow still practicing, providing these same questionable evaluations. Mrs. Porter, Sandra said when I returned from Dr. Chen's office, did Dr. Stokes ever actually examine you, meet with you in person, conduct any tests? Never. I've never seen him, never spoken to him, never been to his office. Then his affidavit is perjury. He lied to the court about evaluating you. That's a serious crime. Sandra also hired a private investigator named Marcus Boyd to look into Terrell's background and motivations. She needed to understand why he was doing this. What Marcus found over the next 24 hours explained everything. Terrell was in serious financial trouble. His real estate business, which he'd started with such optimism 5 years ago, was failing badly. He'd been losing money steadily for the past 18 months. He owed $280,000 on various debts. Business loans he couldn't pay back, multiple maxed-out credit cards. A second mortgage on his own house that he was 3 months behind on. He was facing foreclosure on his house. His credit was destroyed. His business was circling the drain. And his wife Kimberly's spending habits made everything worse. Designer clothes filling her closet. A leased Mercedes she couldn't afford. Private school tuition for their 2 kids at $30,000 per year each. Country club membership they never used. Luxury vacations charged to credit cards. They were drowning in debt with no way out. Marcus also discovered Terrell's internet search history from his business computer, which he'd apparently been careless about securing. Searches going back 6 months. How to get guardianship of elderly parent. Selling parent's house without consent. Power of attorney versus guardianship, which gives more control. How to have parent declared incompetent. Retirement home costs versus home equity. He'd been planning this for at least 6 months. Marcus investigated the real estate listing for my house. My house was worth at least $450,000 according to recent comparable sales in my neighborhood. Terrell had listed it at $425,000 for a quick sale. The listing was with his own real estate company. He'd get the commission about $25,000, but more importantly, as my guardian, he would have complete control over the sale proceeds. All $425,000 of it. He could use that money to pay off his debts, save his failing business, fund his wife's lifestyle, keep his own house from foreclosure, and I'd be locked in Meadowbrook Senior Living, declared legally incompetent, with no ability to stop him or even understand what he'd done. It was a complete theft of my life, my home, my assets, and my freedom, all dressed up as a concerned son helping his declining mother. Sandra worked through the night Wednesday preparing emergency motions. By Thursday morning she'd filed multiple documents with the court. Motion to dismiss guardianship petition based on fraudulent medical evidence and forged documents. Motion for emergency protective order preventing Terrell from taking any further action regarding my property or person. Emergency motion for return of property demanding he return all my furniture and house keys immediately. Motion for emergency hearing before the scheduled guardianship hearing on Friday. She also filed formal complaints with multiple agencies, A detailed police report with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department documenting theft, forgery, and elder abuse. A complaint with the North Carolina Medical Board regarding Dr. Stokes's fraudulent evaluation. A complaint with the North Carolina Real Estate Commission for listing my house without my consent using a forged signature. The evidence she submitted with these motions was overwhelming. Dr. Chen's comprehensive evaluation showing I was fully competent, with detailed test results and professional conclusions. Dr. Williams's statement that I had no cognitive issues and was in excellent health. A forensic handwriting analysis of the power of attorney document, proving the signature was forged and inconsistent with my actual signature. Financial records showing Terrell's debts and demonstrating his clear financial motive. Documentation of Dr. Stokes's disciplinary history and reputation for fraudulent evaluations. Affidavits from my neighbors and friends attesting to my complete competence and independent living. The assigned judge, Judge Monica Harris, reviewed the emergency motions and ordered a hearing for Thursday afternoon, one day before the scheduled guardianship hearing. All parties were required to appear. Terrell hired a lawyer fast. David Brennan, an attorney who specialized in guardianship cases and had a reputation for being aggressive. They filed a response to Sandra's motions that made my blood boil when I read it. Their arguments, that I was in denial about my condition, which was a common symptom in dementia patients who lack insight into their own decline, that I was a danger to myself and had experienced multiple incidents at home that demonstrated I couldn't live safely alone, that Terrell was acting purely out of love and concern for his mother's welfare, not any financial motivation, that the emergency placement at Meadowbrook was necessary because I was refusing needed help, and becoming increasingly agitated, paranoid, and combative. They provided evidence, affidavits from Kimberly and Terrell's sister Ashley claiming I had been increasingly forgetful and confused about basic tasks over the past year. Photographs of my house purporting to show clutter and unsafe living conditions, which were actually just normal signs of someone actively living in their home. A few dishes in the sink. A basket of laundry waiting to be folded. Some mail stacked on the counter, completely normal things that they were trying to spin as evidence of incompetence. Statements from two neighbors saying I kept to myself and didn't socialize much, which they tried to portray as concerning social isolation rather than simply me being an introvert who valued my privacy. Dr. Stokes submitted a supplemental affidavit standing by his original evaluation and claiming he had thoroughly examined Mrs. Porter and conducted appropriate cognitive testing. A complete lie. Terrell also filed for emergency temporary guardianship, claiming I was being manipulated by predatory attorneys who prey on vulnerable elderly people. He wanted an immediate court order to place me in Meadowbrook for my own protection while the case was being decided. Reading these documents, seeing my own son lie about me so convincingly and systematically, was one of the most painful experiences of my life. He was trying to paint me as a confused, declining old woman who didn't understand what was best for her, when the truth was that I understood perfectly well. Terrell was trying to steal everything I had. Thursday afternoon, I walked into the courthouse with Sandra. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit, styled my hair, applied light makeup. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a competent, put-together woman who was perfectly capable of managing her own life. The courtroom was small, just a hearing room with a judge's bench, a few rows of seats and tables for the attorneys. Judge Monica Harris was already seated when we entered. She was a black woman about 61 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and an expression that suggested she'd presided over far too many cases of children exploiting their parents. Terrell sat on the other side of the courtroom with his lawyer Brennan and his wife Kimberly. He wouldn't look at me. Kimberly did look at me though. Her expression was cool, assessing, like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person. Judge Harris called the hearing to order. We're here on emergency motions filed by Mrs. Evelyn Porter regarding a guardianship petition filed by her son Terrell Porter. Miss Fletcher, you filed the motions. Present your case. Sandra stood, and when she spoke her voice was clear and forceful. Your Honor, this is not a case of a concerned son trying to help his aging mother. This is a case of financial exploitation, fraud, and attempted theft disguised as guardianship. She presented Dr. Chun's evaluation first, handing copies to the judge and to Brennan. Mrs. Porter underwent comprehensive neuropsychological testing 2 days ago. Dr. Miriam Chen, a board-certified neuropsychologist with 20 years of experience, found that Mrs. Porter's cognitive function is completely normal for her age. No signs of dementia, no memory impairment, no decline in reasoning ability or judgment. She submitted Dr. Williams' statement next. Mrs. Porter's primary care physician of 15 years confirms she has never observed any cognitive decline whatsoever. Mrs. Porter is healthy, active, mentally sharp and fully capable of independent living. Then she presented the evidence of fraud. The power of attorney documents submitted by Mr. Porter was forged. Forensic handwriting analysis confirms the signature is not Mrs. Porter's. The letter formation, pen pressure and natural flow are all inconsistent with her authentic signature. The medical affidavit from Dr. Richard Stokes is fraudulent. Dr. Stokes never examined Mrs. Porter. She has never met him, never been to his office, never undergone any evaluation by him. He wrote this affidavit based solely on false information provided by Mr. Porter. She showed the judge Dr. Stokes's disciplinary history, the suspension in Virginia, the multiple complaints. Dr. Stokes has a documented history of providing rubber-stamped dementia diagnoses in guardianship cases. He's known for writing fraudulent evaluations without actually meeting the alleged incompetent person. Finally, she presented Terrell's financial motive. Mr. Porter is $280,000 in debt. His business is failing. He's facing foreclosure on his own home. Mrs. Porter's house is worth $450,000, fully paid off with no mortgage. As guardian, Miss Porter would have complete control over the sale of that house and access to all the proceeds. This is not about Mrs. Porter's welfare, Your Honor. This is about Mr. Porter's debts. Judge Harris had been taking notes throughout. Now she looked at Terrell with obvious skepticism. Mr. Brennan, your response. Terrell's lawyer stood up, trying to project confidence. Your Honor, Mrs. Porter is clearly experiencing cognitive decline. Her denial of this fact is itself a symptom of her condition. My client is acting in her best interests. Except your medical evidence comes from a doctor with a history of fraud, who never actually examined my client. Sandra interrupted. Miss Fletcher, I'll hear from both sides without interruption, Judge Harris said firmly. Mr. Brennan, continue. Brennan tried to make his case, but it was clear Judge Harris wasn't buying it. She kept looking at the evidence Sandra had presented, comparing it to what Terrell had submitted. She called me to testify. I walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Sandra asked me questions about my daily life, my routine, my capabilities. Mrs. Porter, please describe a typical day for you. I took a breath and answered clearly. I wake up around 6:30 each morning. I make coffee and breakfast, usually oatmeal or toast with fruit. I read the newspaper. I still have it delivered because I like reading physical paper rather than screens. I manage my own finances completely. I pay all my bills online, balance my checkbook, monitor my bank accounts, manage my investments. I've never missed a payment or had any financial problems. I drive myself wherever I need to go, to the grocery store, to church, to my doctor appointments, to visit friends. I've had my driver's license for over 50 years with no accidents or violations. I do all my own housework, cooking, cleaning, laundry, yard work. I maintain my garden. I volunteer at my church's food pantry twice a week, helping organize donations and serve families in need. I have an active social life. I'm in a book club that meets every other Thursday. I have lunch with friends regularly. I attend church services every Sunday. I manage my own medical care. I take my medications correctly, just blood pressure medication and a vitamin. I keep all my doctor appointments. I make my own medical decisions. I'm fully independent and have been my entire adult life. Have you ever had any episodes of confusion or memory loss that would concern you? Sandra asked. No. I'm sharp. I remember everything. I can tell you what I had for breakfast last Tuesday, oatmeal with blueberries. I can tell you the name of every book my book club has read this year. I know what day it is, what month it is, who the president is. My memory is excellent. Did you ever meet Dr. Stokes or authorize him to evaluate you? Never. I've never seen him, never spoken to him, never been to his office. The first I heard of him was when I read his name on the guardianship petition. Did you sign a power of attorney giving your son authority over your affairs? Absolutely not. I would never do that. I value my independence too much. Did you agree to move into Meadowbrook Senior Living? No. I didn't even know the place existed until they called me on Tuesday to tell me my room was ready. I never applied, never toured the facility, never agreed to anything. Did you give your son permission to take your furniture? No. He broke into my house using keys he must have copied without my knowledge. He stole my furniture while I was in my garden. I came home to find half my house empty. Sandra nodded. No further questions, Your Honor. Then Brennan cross-examined me. clearly trying to make me seem confused or forgetful. He asked rapid-fire questions, tried to trip me up with dates and details, but I answered everything clearly and accurately. He showed me the photos of my house, pointing out the clutter. Mrs. Porter, this photograph shows your kitchen. There appears to be quite a bit of mail stacked on the counter. Do you have difficulty managing your mail? That's mail from 1 week that I haven't thrown away yet, because some of it requires responses. I was sorting through it when my son broke into my house. There's nothing unusual or concerning about having a week's worth of mail on your counter. Your daughter-in-law states in her affidavit that you called asking what day it was. That's a lie. I called to confirm what time their daughter's birthday party started. I knew it was Saturday. I wanted to know if the party was at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock so I'd arrive on time. She also states you forgot about dinner plans. Also a lie. Terrell changed the day from Friday to Saturday at the last minute, and didn't tell me, then claimed I'd forgotten. I have the text messages on my phone proving exactly what was said. Sandra stood up. Your Honor, we can provide Mrs. Porter's phone records showing the exact conversation. Judge Harris nodded. I'd like to see those. Kimberly testified next, trying to support Terrell's claims that I'd been declining. But under Sandra's cross-examination she fell apart quickly. Mrs. Porter, you state in your affidavit that you've been concerned about your mother-in-law's cognitive state for months. How often do you actually visit her? We see her fairly regularly. How often specifically? Once a week? Once a month? Maybe once a month or so. So you visit your mother-in-law approximately once a month. And from those brief visits you've determined she has dementia. She seemed confused sometimes. Can you give me a specific example of a time she seemed confused? Well, I can't remember exactly. You can't remember a specific instance. Yet you signed a legal document recommending she be declared incompetent. Kimberly had no good answer. Did you ever suggest to Mrs. Porter that she see a doctor about your concerns? Terrell handled all that, so you never spoke directly to Mrs. Porter about these alleged concerns? Well, no, but you never suggested she get a medical evaluation. Terrell was taking care of it. So, you witnessed what you claim was cognitive decline, but you never spoke to her about it, never suggested she see a doctor, never took any action yourself. Yet you signed an affidavit supporting involuntary institutionalization. Kimberly stammered something incoherent. Then Sandra played her ace. Your Honor, we have text messages between Mr. and Mrs. Porter that I'd like to enter into evidence. She projected them on a screen for the court to see. Text messages between Terrell and Kimberly recovered through legal discovery. From 3 months ago, Kimberly to Terrell. Your mom's house is just sitting there worth $500,000. She's 70 years old. Why should we struggle with debt while she has all that equity doing nothing? Just get guardianship and sell it. Terrell to Kimberly. I'm working on it. Found a doctor who'll sign whatever evaluation I need. Dr. Stokes. He specializes in guardianship cases. Costs $5 pay but worth it. Kimberly to Terrell. Perfect. Once you have guardianship we can pay off all our debts and start fresh. Maybe even buy a bigger house. Terrell to Kimberly. Mom will be fine at Meadowbrook. They'll take care of her, and we'll finally be financially stable. The courtroom went completely silent. Judge Harris looked at those messages, then looked at Terrell and Kimberly with an expression of pure disgust. Mr. Brennan, do you have anything else to present? Brennan looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. No, Your Honor. Judge Harris didn't need much time to make her decision. She looked at her notes for maybe 2 minutes, then looked up at everyone in the courtroom. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today. I've listened to testimony from both sides, and I've reached the following conclusions. First, Mrs. Evelyn Porter is clearly and obviously competent. The neuropsychological evaluation is comprehensive and definitive. Her testimony today was lucid, detailed, and entirely rational. She demonstrates absolutely no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. Second, the medical evidence supposedly supporting this guardianship petition is fraudulent. Dr. Stokes never examined Mrs. Porter. His affidavit is worthless, and I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of perjury and to the medical board for disciplinary action. Third, the power of attorney document submitted by Mr. Porter is forged. That is a felony under North Carolina law. Fourth, and most disturbing to this court, the text messages make it abundantly clear that this guardianship petition was not filed out of concern for Mrs. Porter's welfare. This was a scheme to steal her assets and pay Mr. Porter's debts. She looked directly at Terrell, and her voice was like ice. Mr. Porter, you attempted to have your competent mother declared incompetent, imprison her in a care facility against her will, and steal her home to pay your debts. That is elder abuse, that is financial exploitation. Those are serious crimes. The guardianship petition is denied. The emergency guardianship request is denied. Furthermore, I'm issuing the following orders effective immediately. Mr. Porter will return all furniture and property taken from Mrs. Porter's home within 48 hours. Every single item. The real estate listing for Mrs. Porter's house is hereby voided and cancelled. That property cannot be sold without Mrs. Porter's explicit written consent verified by an independent attorney. The forged power of attorney is declared null, void, and of no legal effect whatsoever. Mr. Porter is prohibited from entering Mrs. Porter's property or having any contact with her except through legal counsel. Mrs. Porter is granted a restraining order against Mr. Porter effective immediately and continuing indefinitely. Mr. Porter will pay Mrs. Porter's attorney fees and costs in full. And finally, I'm referring this entire matter to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, in the District Attorney for Criminal Investigation. Mr. Porter, you will be investigated for elder abuse, theft, forgery, fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Terrell's face had gone completely gray. He looked like he might be sick. Kimberly was crying, her designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. Mascara running. Their lawyer was gathering his papers, clearly wanting to get out of there as fast as possible. Judge Harris looked at me. Mrs. Porter, you are free to return to your home and live your life as you see fit. Your son and daughter-in-law will not bother you. If they violate any of these orders, they will be arrested immediately. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, thank you. This hearing is adjourned. She banged her gavel with finality. I sat there for a moment, almost unable to believe it was over. Sandra put her hand on my shoulder. You won. You're free. He can't touch you now. Detective Lisa Washington from the Elder Abuse Unit of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police contacted me the very next day. She was a black woman about 46 years old with kind but tired eyes. The eyes of someone who'd investigated too many cases of family members exploiting their own elderly relatives. She came to Sandra's office to take my full statement and review all the evidence. Mrs. Porter, your son committed multiple serious felonies. We're moving forward with criminal charges. What charges? Elder abuse under North Carolina Statute 14-32. Theft. He took your property without permission. Forgery. The power of attorney document. Attempted fraud. The entire guardianship scheme. And conspiracy to commit fraud. He planned this with his wife and the fake doctor. Within a week, Detective Washington had built a comprehensive case. She interviewed Dr. Stokes, who crumbled immediately under questioning. Mr. Porter contacted me about 6 weeks ago. He said his mother was experiencing dementia and he needed medical documentation to support a guardianship petition. He sent me some basic information about her. Her age, living situation, a few incidents he claimed had happened. Did you actually examine Mrs. Porter? Detective Washington asked. No. I wrote the evaluation based on the information Mr. Porter provided. He said she was declining rapidly and wouldn't cooperate with an evaluation, so I documented what he told me. You committed perjury, Dr. Stokes. You swore under oath in a legal document that you had personally evaluated a patient you never met or spoke to. Mr. Porter said she had dementia. I was just documenting what he told me. You lied to a court. That's a crime. Dr. Stokes's medical license was suspended immediately pending a full disciplinary hearing that would likely result in permanent revocation. Detective Washington arrested Terrell on a Tuesday morning at his real estate office. The charges were serious and numerous. Elder abuse, theft, forgery, attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false documents with the court. He was booked, fingerprinted, photographed for his mugshot, and held on $50,000 bail. He posted bail and immediately hired a criminal defense attorney, though I had no idea how he was paying for lawyers given his financial situation. Kimberly tried to claim she didn't know what Terrell was really planning, that she'd just been supporting her husband, but the text messages destroyed that defense completely. She'd been involved from the beginning, actively encouraging the scheme. She was charged as a co-conspirator. Detective Washington also discovered that Terrell's sister Ashley, who'd signed an affidavit claiming I was declining, had done so without ever actually witnessing any decline. When confronted, Ashley broke down in tears. Terrell told me Mom was having problems. He said she'd been getting confused, forgetting things, leaving the stove on. He asked me to sign a statement supporting the guardianship petition. He's my brother. I believed him. I thought I was helping protect Mom. Did you actually witness any of this alleged decline yourself? No. I just trusted what Terrell told me. I should have talked to Mom directly, but I didn't. I'm so sorry. Ashley wasn't charged criminally, but she was devastated by what she'd unknowingly participated in. She called me crying, apologizing over and over. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have questioned him. I should have come to see you myself. Can you ever forgive me? You didn't know he was lying. I said. He manipulated you too. 6 months later, Terrell's criminal trial began. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of his scheme. The forged power of attorney with expert handwriting analysis proving it wasn't my signature. The fraudulent medical affidavit from Dr. Stokes, who admitted under oath that he'd never examined me. The text messages between Terrell and Kimberly showing their premeditation and financial motive. Financial records documenting Terrell's $280,000 in debts. Documentation of the furniture theft. The unauthorized house listing. My testimony about coming home to find my house ransacked. About the phone call from Meadowbrook. About Terrell's lies. Dr. Chen testified about my perfect cognitive evaluation scores. Dr. Williams testified that I'd never shown any signs of decline. Marcus Boyd, the private investigator, testified about Terrell's internet searches planning the guardianship scheme. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. Terrell's defense attorney tried to argue that Terrell had genuinely believed his mother needed help and had made errors in judgment. But the text messages destroyed that argument. Your mom's house is just sitting there worth $500,000. Just get guardianship and sell it. Those weren't the words of a concerned son. Those were the words of a con artist. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing came 2 weeks later. I gave my victim impact statement standing at a podium facing Judge Raymond Cole, the criminal court judge assigned to the case. Your Honor, when that retirement home called me and told me my room was ready, that my son had paid for the year in advance, I thought there was some kind of mistake. I couldn't believe my own son, the child I raised, the man I'd loved and supported his entire life, would try to institutionalize me against my will, but he did. He filed fraudulent documents with the court. He paid a corrupt doctor to claim I had dementia when I'd never even met the man. He forged my signature on legal documents. He stole my furniture from my house. He tried to sell my home. His plan was to have me declared incompetent, lock me in Meadowbrook Senior Living, and spend the rest of my life controlling every aspect of my existence while he drained my bank accounts and sold my property. I would have lost everything: my home, my independence, my dignity, my right to make my own decisions about my own life. This wasn't a son trying to protect his mother from harm. This was a criminal using our family relationship to perpetrate a cruel fraud for financial gain. I ask for the maximum sentence. Not because I want revenge, but because what he tried to do, stealing someone's freedom, their entire identity, their life, deserves serious consequences. Terrell's lawyer asked for leniency, arguing that Terrell was a family man who'd made terrible mistakes out of financial desperation, that prison would destroy his children's lives. Judge Cole was unmoved. Mr. Porter, you exploited your position as your mother's son to attempt one of the most egregious frauds I've encountered in my years on the bench. You tried to imprison a competent, independent woman in a care facility against her will. You forged legal documents. You lied to courts. You conspired with others to create false evidence. You attempted to steal her home and her life savings. You tried to strip your own mother of her freedom and her rights for money. On the charge of elder abuse, 5 years in state prison. On theft, 3 years, to run consecutively. On forgery, 4 years, consecutive. On attempted fraud, 3 years, consecutive. Total sentence 15 years in the North Carolina Department of Corrections. Additionally, you are permanently prohibited from any contact whatsoever with your mother. The restraining order is permanent and survives your incarceration. You will also pay restitution for your mother's legal fees, moving costs and other damages. That amount is $45,000. Terrell would be 60 years old when he was released from prison. Kimberly divorced him within a month of his conviction, not out of any moral principle but to protect whatever assets she could from being seized for restitution. She moved back in with her parents, taking their 2 children with her. The house Terrell and Kimberly had been about to lose to foreclosure was indeed foreclosed upon. The bank sold it at auction. 1 year after everything happened, I was still living in my house. The house I'd shared with my husband for 40 years. The house Terrell had tried to steal. All my furniture was back where it belonged. I'd had every lock in the house changed. I'd installed a security system with cameras covering every entrance. Nobody was getting in without my knowledge ever again. My neighbor Patricia had apologized repeatedly for not questioning Terrell when he showed up with movers. I just assumed you'd agreed to it since he had keys. I should have called you to check. I'm so sorry, Evelyn. It's not your fault. Terrell is a convincing liar. He fooled a lot of people. My relationship with Terrell's sister Ashley had slowly healed. She'd been genuinely deceived, believing Terrell's lies about my supposed decline. I'll never forgive myself for not coming to see you in person before signing that affidavit, she told me over coffee one afternoon. I should have trusted my own observations instead of just believing my brother. You didn't know he was capable of this. None of us did. Terrell's children, my grandchildren, were a more complicated situation. His son Brandon, who was 17 now, had reached out to me tentatively. Grandma, I didn't know what Dad was planning. He told us you were getting sick and needed to move somewhere with more help. If I'd known he was lying, if I'd known what he was really doing. I know, sweetheart. This isn't your fault. Can I still visit you sometimes? Of course. You're always welcome here. What your father did doesn't change how I feel about you. His daughter Emma, who was 14, was still struggling to process that her father was in prison for trying to abuse her grandmother. She hadn't contacted me yet, and I understood. She needed time. I'd become an advocate for elder rights over the past year. I spoke at senior centers across Charlotte about guardianship abuse and how to protect yourself from family members who might try to exploit you. I worked with state legislators on guardianship reform laws, making it harder for predatory family members to gain control over competent elderly people, requiring more oversight and accountability. And I told my story to anyone who would listen. Today, I was speaking at a community center in South Charlotte. About 40 elderly people and their family members had gathered to hear about protecting against guardianship abuse. I told them the whole story. The phone call from Meadowbrook, finding Terrell moving my furniture, the forged documents, the fake medical evaluation, the text messages revealing his plan. My son tried to have me declared incompetent and institutionalized against my will so he could steal my house and pay his debts. He created false evidence, paid a corrupt doctor to provide fraudulent evaluations, and forged my signature on legal documents. The warning signs were there if I'd been more alert. He became suddenly very interested in my finances, asking detailed questions about my house's value, my savings, my estate planning. He was isolating me from other family by always being the one to check on Mom, making everyone else feel like their involvement wasn't necessary. He created a narrative that I was declining, spreading rumors to his wife and sister that I was getting forgetful, even though it wasn't true. He was building a false foundation so that when he filed for guardianship, people would believe his lies. If someone in your family suddenly becomes very concerned about your competence, very interested in your assets, very eager to help with legal and financial matters, be cautious. Ask yourself what their real motivation might be. Do they have financial problems? Are they struggling? Because desperate people do desperate things. After my talk, an elderly woman approached me. She looked about 75, well-dressed, but her hands were shaking slightly. Mrs. Porter, my daughter has been pressuring me to give her power of attorney over my finances. She says it's just to make things easier, to help pay bills, but she keeps asking how much my house is worth, what I have in my bank accounts, and she's been telling her siblings that I'm slowing down even though I feel fine. I recognized the fear in her eyes. The same fear I'd felt. Trust your instincts, I said. Don't give anyone power of attorney unless you absolutely need it for a specific medical or legal reason. And if you do decide you need one, work with an attorney you choose yourself. Someone who will build in safeguards and limitations. But she says I'm getting older and I might need help soon. Are you having trouble managing your affairs right now? Today, she thought about it. Well, no. I pay my bills, manage my money, drive, take care of my house, then you don't need to give anyone power of attorney. If you want help with specific tasks, you can grant limited assistance while maintaining control. That's very different from giving someone complete legal authority over your life. I gave her Sandra Fletcher's business card. Call this attorney before you sign anything. She specializes in protecting elderly people from exploitation. She'll make sure you understand exactly what you're agreeing to and whether you really need it. The woman took the card with visible relief. Thank you. I've been feeling like something was wrong, but my daughter made me feel like I was being paranoid. You're not paranoid. You're being appropriately cautious. And that might save you from what I went through. I'm Evelyn Porter. I'm 71 years old. 1 year ago, a retirement home called me and said my room was ready. My son Terrell had paid the first year in advance, but I'd never applied to a retirement home. I lived independently and was perfectly capable of taking care of myself. The director told me Terrell was there right now, moving my furniture into my room, that he'd said I was having an episode and needed immediate placement for my safety. I drove there in a panic, and found Terrell unloading my furniture from a truck. He had my house keys in his hand. Keys he'd copied without my permission. His plan was to have me declared incompetent through forged documents and fraudulent medical evidence, institutionalize me against my will at Meadowbrook, and sell my house to pay his $280,000 in debts. He failed, and now he's serving 15 years in prison. I learned 3 things that might save someone else from involuntary institutionalization or guardianship abuse. First, I learned the warning signs that a family member is trying to institutionalize you against your will, and why you can't ignore them even when they come from someone you love. The signs started months before the crisis. Terrell became suddenly very interested in my finances, asking questions that seemed innocent at first. "Mom, what's your house worth now? Have you thought about what happens to your money when you're gone?" He started positioning himself as my caregiver, even though I didn't need one. Always being the one to check on Mom, creating a false narrative that I needed supervision. He spread rumors to family members that I was declining, told his sister I was forgetful, told his wife I was having trouble managing. He was building a false story so that when he filed for guardianship, people would believe him. He isolated me from other family by always being the intermediary. When relatives wanted to visit, he'd make excuses. "Mom's tired today. She's not feeling well," making it seem like concern when really he was controlling access to me. These are classic tactics used by family members planning guardianship abuse. Creating a narrative of incompetence, isolating the victim, positioning themselves as the necessary caregiver. If someone in your family suddenly becomes very interested in your competence, your assets, your legal documents, pay attention. Ask why. What's their motivation? Are they in financial trouble? Because guardianship abuse almost always has a financial motive. Second, I learned your legal rights to refuse placement in care facilities and fight guardianship petitions, and why you must act immediately. I didn't know this before it happened to me. You cannot be involuntarily placed in a care facility without a court order granting guardianship. Even if family claims you need care, even if they say it's an emergency, even if they've already paid for a room, they cannot legally force you into a facility without going through the proper legal process. Terrell tried to bypass this by moving fast, by creating fraudulent evidence, by getting me into Meadowbrook before I could object. He thought the court would just rubber stamp his petition, but I had rights. The right to an attorney, the right to present evidence of my competence, the right to challenge his fraudulent medical evaluation, the right to a hearing where I could testify. The key is acting immediately. When you learn about a guardianship petition, I had only days between finding out and the scheduled hearing. If I'd waited, if I'd been too scared or confused to fight back, Terrell might have won. If someone files for guardianship over you, hire an elder law attorney immediately within hours if possible. Get a comprehensive cognitive evaluation from a legitimate neuropsychologist to prove your competence. Gather evidence of your daily functioning, how you manage finances. Maintain your home, care for yourself. Challenge any medical evidence. Demand to know who evaluated you and when. If you never met them, that's perjury. Attend the hearing. Testify. Let the judge see you're competent. Don't give up. The burden of proof is on the person seeking guardianship. If you can demonstrate you're capable, they should lose. Third, I learned how to protect yourself before family members can attempt guardianship abuse, and why advanced planning matters. The best protection is planning ahead while you're clearly competent. Create advanced directives, healthcare power of attorney and financial power of attorney, but only to people you trust absolutely, with strict limitations and safeguards. Have regular cognitive evaluations as you age. Document your competence with professional assessments. If someone later claims you're declining, you have recent proof otherwise. Maintain relationships with multiple family members and friends. Don't let one person become your only contact. Isolation makes exploitation easier. Keep your legal documents with your attorney, not at home where family can access or forge them. Be transparent about your estate plans with multiple people. Don't create uncertainty that breeds desperation. And most critically, if you don't need help, don't accept it. Don't let family take over your finances or legal matters just to make things easier. Once they have control, it's harder to take it back. If you or someone you love is facing guardianship abuse or involuntary institutionalization, comprehensive resources including elder law attorneys, Adult protective services and advocacy organizations are in the description below. Choose immediate action over waiting. Choose professional legal help over trying to handle exploitation alone. Choose protecting your rights over avoiding family conflict. Because I'm standing here today only because I fought back the moment I found out. Because I hired Sandra Fletcher within hours. Because I refused to accept Terrell's lies about my competence. He thought I'd be too confused, too intimidated, too trusting to stop him. He was wrong, and he's paying for that mistake with 15 years in prison while I'm living independently in my own home, using my story to protect others. Thank you for listening. If this saves even one person from being institutionalized against their will, then what I went through meant something.